On ESPN Wisconsin, part of our packed summer series. We welcome in Wisconsin Zone, Sports Center anchor, working all the stuff he does at ESPN. He is John Anderson. Also catch him on the Inside Wisconsin podcast. John, I thought I told you this was a Packers podcast, man. We got the Badger helmet in the background. You got
Yep.
the old-fashioned golf polo is fantastic. I've got one of those myself, but
Here.
we've got, there's the mini helmet. Okay, there we go. We do have a Packers helmet.
And look, it's the John Anderson helmet.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So we can put that up there more prominent if you need to. I want to look like a homer, obviously, with my red and white, but this is a permanent setup. Look, here I am riding my bike.
Okay, there we go.
Lambeau Field. I think that picture was taken, I was actually like 49 years old, but that's fine.
It's all fine.
Did that. I did that like any kid back in the day. If you ever want to go really look up some horrible, I shouldn't say horrible, some fascinating trivia, go look up Leland Glass. Glass. He was a Packer in the 70s, and he took my bike down to the practice field every summer. He was only here 2 years. I think he caught maybe 20 balls total.
Oh, sure.
And he is sort of most recognized or memorable is when Oregon had a really good team in the late 60s, early 70s. Dan Fouts was the quarterback. Bobby Moore, now Ahmad Rashad, was their running back. And Leland Glass was their really good receiver on that team, in that offense. And he played two seasons here and undistinguished and may have caught one touchdown pass. But that's my guy.
That was your guy as a kid. And the one good news, I guess, if you're a Packers fan looking to go up there this summer, there are a lot of young faces that you could try to attach yourself to because there are a lot of young players. I believe only 3 players currently over the age of 30 on the Packers roster. Let's go ahead and start with this offseason because I feel like we've breezed past and we've transitioned, maybe because we've been through this before, transitioned very quickly into the Jordan Love era and focusing on him and everything going on with the OTAs and this week with mandatory minicamp. But when you take kind of the step back and the 10,000-foot view, if you could, what have you thought of the Packers offseason?
I guess I would say I am pleased with what they have done. You finally have come to a resolution on the most important question, which was, what are you going to do at quarterback and Aaron Rodgers? And very much like Brett, they eventually crossed the Rubicon, and there we are. And so now the big part is, can you block out the noise of every day Aaron talks to somebody, where before you couldn't find him? Every day now he's available apparently for the New York media, or you can find him at the Tonys or wherever he is. But I am glad they at least they have that settled. So now you can push forward. Like, I think that is number one. We'll wait and see if they made the right decision. I think it's okay at some point, right? I don't want anybody on my team that just really doesn't want to be here anymore. And I can remember a track coach telling me one time about recruiting. He's like, if you really got to beg them to come, then at some point you're going to have to beg them to stay. And that's what happened when they tried to get him back the first time, right? They had to beg him to come back. And now we're in the position where now you're having to beg him to stay the next year. So I'm kind of glad they're out of that cycle. Hopefully Love's great. I don't know if he's going to be as good as 12, but at least you've got some place that you're clean and we can move that on. It's not a hovering question for 52 more weeks in the coming year. You look at the draft. I feel like they went after things they needed, got guys they needed, the tight end. By the way, Leland Glass, also not a first-round draft pick at wide receiver. So this thing has been happening for a while.
For a long time.
We got outside of James Lofton, right?
James Lofton and Sterling Sharp. That's about it,
that's fine. So they address some needs there. I'll be curious to see what they do. I think they'll probably have to find a veteran quarterback to come in here at some point to just be there. I don't know if Seneca Wallace is available, but somebody to, to just kind of have in reserve. Clifford might be great.
Scott Tolzien's a coach now too, so you can't call him up. He's busy down in Dallas.
You never know. Guys will kill to play, right? They go to the USFL and the XFL. So I do. I just feel like you've addressed most of the needs you have. There'll be other questions that are constant. I haven't checked lately. What's our offensive line situation? Have we let all of Brett's buddies gone yet? Or are we still deciding on
So it would appear if they really wanted to, John, they could trade David Bakhtiari now with that post June 1 designation because you
Right.
could spread the cap. But they renegotiated his deal to keep him around.
Good.
And from all the reporting that I've understood, whether it's been from our guy Jason Wilde here at ESPN Milwaukee and Madison, it seems that the two spots on the left side with Bakhtiari at left tackle and Elton Jenkins at left guard, those are
Mhm.
decided. Everything else is kind of up for grabs. So there's just a lot of moving parts going on with the
Yeah.
Green Bay Packers offense, especially when it comes to
Well,
veterans.
and the line's been a moving part for how long? Right? It seems like every week.
Mm-hmm.
Soon as Balaga gets hurt, we have to move Benny, and that's been happening now for 13 years. Right? I think from his initial injury, the thing has been in flux going forward for how many years? So I think they have everybody there. I think it's crucial. The two people that now are under the gun become your head coach, right? Okay, are
Mm-hmm.
you really the head coach? We think he is. I don't think that Mark Murphy brought him in because he thought he could only coach Aaron Rodgers, but we'll see. And now it's on can Love play, but some of that like I said, I feel like this one really comes down a lot to the coaching staff. Young players, assume they have ability, assume the scouting department did all right. So now can you develop them? Can they be starters? Can they be contributors? Can they be above average players at those positions? And we'll see if like I said, Matt's job got a lot harder. LaFleur's going to have to. We'll find out more if he can coach. But I feel like they didn't. I don't feel like there's any big move, trade, signing, or something that they left out there. But
yeah, I would agree with that. I would have preferred personally a veteran pass catcher, just because I think of John when we've gone through these transitions before. You think back to Brett's first year, he had Sterling. He had that security blanket. When Aaron went through this, they had some young receivers like Greg Jennings was coming into his own, but they still had Donald Driver who ended up breaking every pass catching record that there was. Right now, the oldest wide receiver on the roster, his name is Jeff Cotton. I don't know if he's ever actually made a roster. He's been on a couple practice squads. Your most experienced receivers are the ones that you drafted last year in Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs. It would just be nice, I think, to kind of have a veteran, to kind of be that security blanket and help the development to try to give some confidence to Jordan Love. And just listening to Mark Chmura, who I do the morning show with every day here on ESPN Milwaukee, talk about how guys like Eddie West were so important to his development. I think it's just nice to have a veteran to help these rookies come along and almost act as not just a player, but also a secondary coach.
Yeah, I don't even know it's in terms of do they need that guy because he can catch a pass, but you're right. In terms of sort of setting the standard, this is how you become. This is how you act as a professional. This is how you do your job every day. This is how we take every single rep. Those guys do get to be important. And so now you go back to who's your position coach. Can your position coach make sure he teaches how you want to? But it's nice when guys know how to get in the receiving line and run the route tree because the guy in front of them has done it and they learn from there instead of teaching. But, Watson's got a year under his belt, and sometimes young and dumb is not terrible, provided they know all the correct hand signals. But I do think there is something to be said for that part of it in terms of teaching guys the accountability and the professionalism that comes with being a player in the NFL, because we see enough of it go off the rails when that's not there. We see enough of it when it goes off the rails when that person is there and you still can't keep people on the straight and narrow. But for the most part, you're like, here it is. A defense that we thought was going to be really good last year returns for the most part, right? There's no reason they shouldn't be okay. Maybe they improve knowing that Aaron's not there to try and bail them out, or as they saw last year, he didn't. We kind of keep getting away from that. If I have one complaint in the last year about our ESPN people, is I thought we protected Aaron Rodgers a lot and for a long time. And nobody ever I am not in any way suggesting the guy's washed. But I think there were a lot of times where he played really poorly. And let's go to the film. Oh, this block was not excused. Or, oh, this guy cut off his route a little bit short. Okay, I think if we went back and looked even at his heyday, there were a lot of those things happening. And he managed to cover for them. So, and nobody last year really wanted to just come out and say, you know what, there were games where Aaron stunk. which is okay. I think you can say that. I think there were times he said, I didn't play well, I'd still, in that situation, I'd much rather have him than not have him. But there were times that he didn't throw for 300 yards at all in a game last year. He did not play great. I don't know why. Like I've said it a couple times, lightning has not struck me. The heavens have not opened up and washed away my yard when you say that. But I feel like for some reason, there was a hesitancy to just say very simply, you don't have to destroy a guy. Hey, look, he didn't play well.
Do you think that's partially because it feels like everybody, especially last year, was kind of walking on eggshells after this whole thing kind of blew up? Whether, you mentioned earlier, begging him to come back. So now that expectation's been set, you walk on those eggshells. So now even the fans almost become kind of scared to criticize him, because, oh man, I don't want to upset Aaron. Like we're in these positions because of Aaron. And look, hand in the air, man. I'm the guy that has apologized for Aaron Rodgers in the past. And it just seems like he's only capable, or at least in his mind, everything has to be perfect. I'm a perfectionist. But yet I remember Randall Cobb very famously scored his first career touchdown on the offense. His rookie year, first game of the year. Packers are playing the Saints on that Thursday night game. He ran the wrong route. And afterwards, everybody was talking about how Randall ran the wrong route, but Aaron threw it to him anyways, and he ended up scoring a touchdown, So clearly Aaron has had some flexibility in the past. Maybe he was trying to prove a point. I don't know what it was, but yes, to your point, I think there is a way to have flexibility. But I guess we don't have to worry about that anymore.
And that's why they've been best friends ever since. They walked arm in arm in the end of that thing. Is because he did that for him. Yeah, I do. I think I'm not sure cloud's the right word, but that energy was constantly around that team. There was no way to get around it. And it got worse too. I don't know if you picked up on this or if people have, maybe it's just me, is it sort of then perpetuated itself. Because where it used to be, if there was a ball that was overthrown or an incompletion, you just showed the coach on the sideline or the fans or the guy. Then now, in the last year, every time there was an incompletion, immediately was a cutaway of Aaron, right?
Yep.
They went right back to the shot of Aaron to see if he was disgusted, to see if he rolled his eyes, to see if he... So even that permeated everything, even on broadcast, right? There was no simple just incompletion. There was no simple, hey, on occasion he just threw it away. But it was always the immediate cutaway back was always right to Aaron Rodgers to get his reaction, which is hard on him too, because now he probably did things that he's done for 20 years, 17 years, and we never really noticed because after the incompletion, we showed the guy drinking his Miller Lite in the stands, or we showed the guy in his cheese head. You know what I'm saying? But this game suddenly now it was uber and hyper focused all the time on what was happening there. So I think that being gone too all those things will help add some freedom to the team, some freedom to the group. Does it translate to wins? I don't know. We can go through the division later. I don't know that the Bears are really better than the Packers yet. I think the Lions are improved, but I don't know that I'm totally sold on them yet. The Vikings, I'll never be totally sold on.
Attaboy.
So I think that there's certainly, some more parity and some, crapshoot in that division. But I don't know that I'm in a position here where I go, oh, woe is me for the Packers. They don't have Aaron. They have young receivers. The defense was not what it's supposed to be. Again, that's why we coach. That's why hopefully when they get older, they get better. And Love doesn't have a ton of excuses. I know he hasn't played a lot of reps, but he sat there for 3 years. He needs to be ready to go on day one. And I'm sure somebody will alibi a lot. Well, he had a lot of game experience. There's some of that, but he needs to be ready to go. I don't have a ton of excuses for him not to be ready. And I'm like you, I have made some allowances for Aaron, especially around here. People are like, oh, he's a bad guy. Like, I don't know that he's a bad guy. He's just a different guy.
Yeah.
I don't ever remember seeing him on the police blotter. Right? I don't remember seeing him in white collar crime insider trading. So I don't know that he's a bad guy. He's just totally different. I wrote a piece when he left. I don't know if you saw it. That like people in Green Bay, he's just weird. to them. Like, we will sit around in darkness for hours, but that's only if it's in a duck blind. Right? We won't purposely go
If you have the shotgun next to you, then it's
for a tree stand, but we're
Yeah.
not going specifically just to be there. So, like I said, we're not against that. We just do it in a very different way and have a very different view of what darkness retreats mean.
I want to go back to something that you said about Matt LaFleur, and I think that this is the next 2 years are going to be huge for him. But I feel like the job is just different now. I don't want to say, oh, now we're going to find out if he's a really good coach, because I think the last 4 years he has been a pretty good coach. The job is just different. When he came in, he had Aaron Rodgers, he had Devontae Adams, he had these things, and he was the coach. And I know you don't want to give him a ton of credit because a lot of it goes to Aaron for being the MVP. But the last 2 years under Mike McCarthy, Aaron was slipping a little bit. Like his first year with, LaFleur wasn't star-spangled awesome. And then he has back-to-back MVPs. And I think LaFleur deserves at least a little bit of credit there of finding a way to morph his offense into what Aaron wanted to do. Now it's a completely different job. What he's doing, what he was originally hired to do, and now what the job is going to be. But I don't want to make it seem like, oh, just because he had Aaron Rodgers, he just covered up everything that Matt LaFleur. I think LaFleur had a part of the Packers' success. Now the job's just different because you don't have that veteran 4-time MVP at QB.
Yeah, I don't think he's kind of the paper George Seifert, Steve Young kind of made coach, right? Seifert went there, won a Pro Bowl or won a Super Bowl, all this, and then all of a sudden they went, wow, maybe he can't coach, at least not as a head coach. There's the play landscape is littered with guys who are wonderful assistants, aren't cut out to be head coaching candidates, which doesn't mean they can't coach football. They're just better, instead of it being in front of the press, in front of the team all the time, being in a dark room with their film projector doing load schemes, and that's great. So I think in that regard, he was good. And I don't mean in any way, shape, or form that what happened with LaFleur in his first few years was strictly on Aaron. But I do have questions in that, okay, now he is gone. Like you said, that's a simple one. And I have questions about, because anymore, X's and O's are certainly a part of it. But there hasn't been anything really new invented in football since the forward pass, and that goes back a long ways. So you can out-scheme people here and there and be really smart once in a while, but we see it all the time. You come out of the locker room, and the scripted pages come out, and you out-scheme people, right? And how many times do guys just offense or defense, the Packers or the other side, score in that first possession because they know. And then everybody and suddenly that looked like the easiest 7 points you'll ever get, and we're just going to get 500 yards of offense. People make adjustments. The biggest thing that bothers me is the way the last 3 seasons have ended on your home field. And if I'm a coach anymore, X's and O's are one thing. How do you motivate your guys? How do you have them ready to play? How do you have them to go in the biggest games? And in that, he has yet to pass that test. Whether it's
100%.
Was it San Francisco?
Yep.
And then
it was Tampa Bay, San Francisco, and then last year against Detroit.
San Francisco, and then the Lions. And that to me is troubling. Hard to get around, hard to alibi through any of that. Because those are just situations that the Packers didn't lose in before. And that was whether it was Starr or heck, Lynn Dickey won the playoff game at home against the Cardinals, and they routed them. It hasn't been the same since Michael Vick came in when it was 75 degrees or whatever it was in January and ran circles around them, and then literally some of that air has gone out of that, right? How is it Eli Manning beat him in that? So maybe it's a larger juju that is now all on Matt, because there's several embarrassing things. I think they're embarrassing losses because they were mostly games that you should have won, right? I don't know any of those games where you'd go back and look like, well, we were a 14-point underdog. I don't know how you end up hosting a playoff game if you were that 14-point underdog. But I find all those to be embarrassing. And what Matt's got, those are 3 big stains that have not washed out yet.
Yeah, no, I think that's completely fair. It's the larger point I'm trying to make is I think there are different coaches for different situations. Sure. I guess the best way I can put it maybe is in terms of the Milwaukee Bucks. Like Jason Kidd wasn't a good X's and O's coach, but no. I think Jason Kidd helped the development of Giannis. I think there are a couple of things that he put into Giannis's head, especially being somebody who has to be a primary ball handler. Now, Jason Kidd was never going to lead him to a championship, That's where Mike Budenholzer came in, right? Like
Yeah.
there's different coaches for different situations.
Yes.
And now the situation in Green Bay has changed. Is Matt LaFleur the guy for that in terms of developing a young roster and getting them up to speed and making them a successful NFL team? That's the part that remains to be seen for him.
It is. You're right. He now has a different job, different team in some regards, right? He has freedom now to implement exactly what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
He can develop Jordan Love exactly how he wants. You know, if he would like to confuse us all and suddenly make him a great wishbone quarterback in the triple option, but he can do that now, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't do that before. You're like, Aaron, I've got this great idea. You know, we're going to run the veer, and he can't. But with this guy, with Love, if he really wants to, he can. So yes, I think you're completely. It's a great piece of analysis in that he is now. He's got more elbow room to do what he would like to do, and it is a different squad, and hopefully he's got ideas. Like again, I don't think he gets hired because he was the caretaker of Aaron any more than when McCarthy came in. He was, and it's ironic, right? Those both played out exactly the same. There had been decline. McCarthy comes in. Brett has some, he kind of returns to form. Fallout, goodbye. Same thing here.
Yeah.
So it is. I don't know how you feel. I look at it and I think the parallels are remarkable.
It's unbelievable. Like we have the playbook, and it's like we're reading the same book again. It's unbelievable.
With the exception being, Brett wanted to come back, and Aaron didn't, which has made, I think, a huge. And again, I'm trying to kind of gauge this from 1,000 miles away in Connecticut, and of course, what I hear from my mom, who at 82, totally reliable source. But I do think there's been a completely different feeling about the departing of Aaron than there was with Rodgers, right? With Favre. Favre was like, he wanted to come back. How can he do that? Oh my God, he might go to the Vikings. That was terrifying. And here it's like, listen, if you don't want to be here, good riddance. At some point, we're all proud. I always tell people, nobody wants the best team to win. They want their team to win, right? Nobody is ever interested in the best team winning. And in this case, we're protective of our franchise. We're protective of our city, in the whole state. And like, if we're no longer kind of we're not, if you can't buy in and you're not satisfied with us anymore, well, then that's okay. We've got a little go to hell to you in this. And I think that's happened here. I think there's been some. Brett wanted to come back. Okay, how can we get rid of Brett? And Aaron's like, listen, if you want to go, if it's that much of a chore to play for the Packers and be here, despite all the lovely things he said about the fans, which is great, but bottom line is you didn't feel like you wanted to play here, then okay. And those are the two. That's of this situation that mirrors itself so closely. That's the one thing that I feel is changed, is that Packer people right now are not weeping and gnashing their teeth. And I think in that regard, that helps Love. I think Jordan Love gets a little more grace period than Aaron did. I think people thought Aaron better come in and play right away. That was through no fault of his own. That was the way it was handled with Brett. But
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
It's when it comes to Love, that's a great point where I think he has a little bit more of that legroom to operate, because I mean, you had the famous clip of the guy talking to Ted Thompson in the atrium saying, well, what are you doing with Aaron Rodgers? All these, you got Brett Favre who's going to take you to the Super Bowl. Aaron Rodgers is going to take you to the toilet bowl. I don't think anybody's, going up to Brian Gutekunst and talking to him like that in the atrium anytime soon. So I think he's got a little bit more support than what Aaron had in Aaron's first season, which is huge for him. He's not going to have to deal with people booing him when they show up for training camp practices.
Well, you never know. You might have the lone outsider that's still out there. But and the other thing is, I think at some point maybe the Packer front office has earned our trust in how they've handled things. They've won for a lot of years, and the few dips they have not been these trenches of 5 and 6 years of mediocrity or terribleness. And that goes back as far as, for whatever reason thing these happen. I don't want, and it's older, when they realized Ray Rhodes wasn't it, they moved on. And they've done some of that. And that's a lot of the old, that's the old Ron Wolf thing. Like people are going to make mistakes in personnel decisions. It's just what it is. You're trying to evaluate 22-year-old kids. You're trying to do all this thing. You're trying to make the team chemistry work. And he's like, listen, if you botch it, how do you get out of it as soon as you can? And sometimes there's a price that doesn't quite, somewhere Andrew Brandt saying like, we can't get rid of him right this second. But for the most part, that's the old Ron Wolf thing, man. Once it's gone bad, if it's not right, get rid of it as soon as you can. And so it's kind of like Brett, right? Like, let's trade him now for all the pick. Let's take the cap hit here and all right now, rather than spread it out in 2 years. A lot of people, it'll be cheaper. Okay, but you're still hanging with all the dead money. I'd rather get rid of it this year, and now you can push forward and cut it out as quickly as you can.
Well, you can kind of start building a good base right now with the young talent that you have. And presumably, if Aaron plays 65% of the snaps, you'll have, 2 first-round picks next year. And the salary cap is going to continue to get better in 24 and 25, and you'll be able to kind of go at it in earnest, I think, in 24 and 25 in terms of the rebuild. The one thing the Packers, I do think, have really going for them, John, you mentioned the division. I think it's not just the division. I think it's the conference. You look at the AFC, and just about every good quarterback in the NFL is playing in the AFC now. And over here, you've got the Niners, who are a great team, but who's going to be their quarterback? The Eagles have a great quarterback in Jalen Hurts. And after that, we're seeing Derek Carr, who was released by his team, showing up on top 5 quarterbacks in the NFC list currently. So if the Packers can have some success this year, I think part of it's going to be based on, I'm not really sure how good the division is. And I know the NFC is not as stacked as the AFC.
Yeah, okay, so I said I think the Packers need a veteran quarterback, but if they get Jameis Winston, I could be out. It may end it all for me right there. That one, okay, maybe I was incorrect, right? But the same thing, Baker Mayfield has been a marquee signing.
Yeah.
And even if he's good, he's a retread. This is where you went to go and find him. Maybe he gets rejuvenated as well. And Jalen Hurts, as much as I like him, and I think he's a classy dude, and I've been around him enough to feel like you have some pulse of him. He still's done 1 year, right? For the most part, he's had one really terrific year. Nick Foles had a great year. He was like 27.
Carson Wentz had a good year that year too.
He went, well, that's just when he came back. Remember, he had the year when he was starting, he threw 27 touchdowns and like 2 interceptions. So, you need to do a little. There are a lot of people, a lot of defensive coordinators. They're looking at Jalen Hurts all winter long, and they'll have stuff for him, which is one of those things too, where you truly appreciate the Tom Brady's and the Aaron Rodgers of the world, that even though those guys, it's kind of the equivalent of thinking about scouting reports and pitching. There's somebody always trying to get you out, and defense coordinators were always trying, how we get this guy out, and they never could. And that's really they'll get a book on Jordan Love pretty soon too, and how he goes. So remains to be seen. But yeah, the whole place it's there for the taking. I don't know that it could be. It's one of those, like, if the quarterback was guaranteed, you could really run roughshod over there. But there's space. The ceiling can be high with this group, and to the point of Aaron and walking on eggshells, it occurs to me too, because I've seen this before on other teams. Is there anybody's growth as a leader that was stunted because he was there? You knew who he was. You can. And who knows? Maybe Jordan Love comes in now and is kick ass in pulling this. Or maybe Christian Watson is a guy who's like, all right, I'm okay. Maybe Aaron Jones is like, load up 33 on my back. Here we go. I will put on the sombrero and get in line and follow me. Right. So there may be leaders in that locker room that now are able to, voice, and as you said, younger guys. So, because Aaron and generation gaps happen. Look, that happens to me. I just passed 24 years at ESPN, and there are these new people come in, and I work with them some, and it's just harder because it's not sitting next to John Buccigross, or it's not sitting next to Kenny Mayne, right? Like, there is something said for that. Oh, we're getting ready to start. What are you doing? Oh, I'm taking the photo so I can post and put it on TikTok. Really? How about you find out if Aaron Judge went 3 for 4 tonight and put it on the shot sheet so we can give them? But it's a different sort of situation. And so I can see where, that can be difficult. I'm sure there are people like, Anderson sucked tonight, but who do I go tell that to? He's been here 24 years. I've been here 5 minutes, and I don't want to get. So I do think that there's a possibility there might be some guys on that team that are itching to stand up and be the guy in the meeting room, be the guy that takes that drill, be the guy to hold people accountable. And that's what you can hope. But I think there's probably people in there that are ready to fill sort of that vacuum and that void that's left behind. And those guys doesn't always have to be a star player. How he's gone, but how important was Mercedes Lewis was like that, right? He was, out on the field watching him, you'd have never know that guy was one of the, he was a guy that kept people in line. He was a guy that was a presence. There'll be people like that.
The part that's exciting to me, and I'm not expecting, a NFC North Division championship from this team this year, just because I think they still have so much growing to do. But I think of, again, going back to Brett when he first came in, and he was able to grow with Mark Chmura and Robert Brooks, and when they added Antonio Freeman, and then you had this core for like 4 years that was really fun to watch. Same thing with Aaron. Yes, he had Donald Driver, but then, here comes Greg Jennings, here comes Jordy Nelson, here comes James Jones, and they have this core that they then can go forward with. That's what's exciting to me. If Jordan Love can be a good starter in the NFL, he's got a really good and a really cool opportunity to me to grow with Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs, whether it ends up being Kraft or Musgrave, whichever one of the two tight ends that they drafted, or even maybe both, if they can continue to develop. I think the fun part about having this young roster is as the season goes along, kind of identifying what that core is going to be of the Green Bay Packers in 24, 25, and 26.
And that group, when Favre came through, and I hate to live so much in the past, but you kind of, try to go with some of the markers you see. They had, and again, some of this very well, we know, trickled down from number 4, but they had a joy.
Yes.
And a fun about them that was playing that I don't know that I've seen in the last couple of years.
Yep.
And if you get that group of young guys that are like, hey, we're 24, 25, and we're really good, let's go. And I do think they were sometimes almost sort of clinical in the last couple years. And that was one thing, even till they left. The Favre team was not. Sometimes, they managed to buckle down because you had people, Ron Wolf said on defense, as much as people talked about Reggie White, that was Leroy Butler's locker room. But they played with a joy. They played with a sense of fun that I don't think that team has played with the last couple of years.
No, and I think you saw that joy when Aaron first came through. Like, again, it started with, and everybody has done it since, but it started with the championship belt that Rodgers would do, that celebration that he did when he was, running scout team and had guys, Ruvel Martin ended up not developing into a big-time wide receiver, but he had really good relationships with Jordy, with James, with, we've mentioned Randall Cobb. And when those guys were there, you could see that joy as they were coming up. I think when you start talking about that generational gap that happens, it's just tough to have that connection and be on that same level, just from the personal standpoint of not only are you excited that you did something cool, but you just threw a touchdown pass to your pal and you're super excited for him too. And I'm just kind of hoping we can get back to some of that as this team starts to grow.
Yep. And that then we kind of cycle back to LaFleur to kind of, I don't want to say reestablish the culture, because I think he has the culture he wants, but there can be tweaks to that culture. You're always going to have your core tenets that you want to abide by. But there's chances for him to, encourage some of that with this new group, but this younger set of people that come through. And we've watched enough football that we know when every preseason magazine comes out, they still have magazines, right? They do. Yep. Open them. Because I get my Sports Illustrated online, but all those, my Street and Smith, all those, they're gonna lay it out, and you know what? There's we've got how many divisions? We got our 4 divisions, and 3 of those 14-3 teams aren't gonna be, and 3 of those teams that we think are 6 and 11 aren't gonna be. So all of this is so much a crapshoot in anything when it comes through, because we just have seen that, right? We're going to take all these teams. There's going to be 5 new playoff teams, maybe 4 in each league for sure. And so it can always still be a why not us kind of thing for the Packers, right? Yeah. Heck, go look at the team that beat them at the end. They're 1-8 or whatever. They're 1-7. There's time to go.
Yeah, they just kept it rolling. And what are your expectations for the Packers? What are you going in as a Packer fan? As you know, you've seen all that you've seen. What are
Right.
you expecting the Green Bay Packers to be in 2023?
As a Packer fan, right? I still think I just look at that division and think there isn't a reason that they cannot finish above 500. It could be 9-8, but I feel like they can oust that. I feel like for all the loss of Aaron Rodgers, his play was not so great that someone has to play to some superior level to match that, right? He didn't play like an MVP. The 2 years prior, when we went and he gets the number 1 seed in the MVP. Okay, if we were replacing that guy, which guy are we replacing? Are we replacing that guy or are we replacing this guy? But I think there's room there. The schedule doesn't overwhelm me. I think that I don't know that 9-8 could be a playoff. I don't know. I think that would be. I think if that team somehow, if this current team with the unknowns would reach a playoff, whether it's 9-8 or 14-3. By the way, does that trouble you every time you say something? You got to redo the math because 14 always used to be 14-2, and 8-8 used to be 8-8. Drives me nuts.
Yeah. So I mean, again, I do the morning show with Mark Chmura, and he's been totally thrown off by that. So at this point, we just say the wins. Whatever wins you think. So it's going to be 7 in the math.
Yeah.
So the losses just ends up being in the math.
Right, and then whatever comes after that. But I would be really pleased if that team shows improvement, shows that they look like they know what they're doing, looks like they're on the right road. If they can win 9 games and the math, then I think that's a really, really good start to his career. Favre, what was Favre in his first year? Not 3, and there were some 9 and there were some 9 and 7s in the math there early on. And Aaron's first year was not overwhelming. So
6-10.
At the same time, if it becomes 6 or 7 wins, I don't know that I'm ready to climb up and fling myself off a skybox either.
No, because again, Aaron went 6-10 that first year, and the defense certainly let them down. But Aaron played well enough where you went, ooh, okay, I think we got something here. And I think that's all I'm looking for Jordan Love. If they make the playoffs, great. I'll be ecstatic. Yeah. But it's more about, okay, you're eating over $50 million in dead money, with Aaron Rodgers, $40 million, and then all the other cap money that you've had to push off for other guys. You're eating over $50 million in cap hits. If we can at least show that we're going in the right direction, that's what's going to make me excited as a Packers fan, because they have a young team that could be together as a core for a number of years going forward, if indeed they're the right players and they're building towards a bright future.
Yeah, sometimes every year when I start the new golf season, I got with absolutely zero expectation. And by the end of the year, I'm like, okay, I think I can go out and play well, right? I've done it. But when I start, I just think, can I have more good shots than bad shots? Can I have more good holes? And so instead of keeping literally pars, birdies, or bogeys, I'm just like, that was a decent hole. And I come through and I've played 18. I go, lo and behold, I'm 9-9. I'm 9 in the math. But I'm like, okay, so I've played. My game's okay because I've got 9. I had 9 good holes. I had 9, and I feel that way kind of the Packers. Can I feel like I've had more good holes, more good games than bad games, and I see enough in my game and the good ones that I can progress and there's room to build on, or should I start selling all my golf shirts and taking up tennis or paddleball or pickleball? But I do feel so I kind of almost look at it like that. Okay, can we put together more good games than bad games? Or if there is a loss, again, I get it. Your record says it says you are. But if I go in and I play a team that I know is of playoff caliber, and we go toe to toe with them, that's then I think there are signs to be encouraged. And no transformation, and I think there's clearly some transformation here. Like none of those transformations are 1-year deals. You cannot be Deion Sanders and get rid of 80 of your players and bring in 85 new ones in the portal. So you can't just turn that thing over that quickly. You can do it in a year or two. We've seen guys come in there, but but if there's that transition, I'm willing to give them some space in what's clearly a transition year.
John, where are all the great things you got going on? I know you've got obviously Sports Center, but where can people find all the great things that you do?
Oh, well, the great things I don't know. The things I do, all the things I am a part of. No, I'm hoping to be a little less busy. A lot of Sports Center, although not as much as I used to, which is good. I purposely cut that back because I'm 58 and I can't stay up till like the night of the NBA championship game till 3 a.m. again. That's fine, but I can't do it 10 nights in a row. So usually kind of Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, Monday, I'm there. I'm doing Inside Wisconsin with Trevor Thomas. So you can find us there, InsideWisconsin.com and on the YouTube. Who's up there right now? We just did Paul Kaufman, and why is it escaping me who's up there right now? I'm a terrible human being.
People can check it out and find it out themselves.
Yeah, and then I am, I'm such a good advocate for the show, am I not? and then oddly enough, if there's kind of a track meet on your screen, I might be there. I've been through the NCAA. I'm going to go out to USA Track and Field Nationals in Eugene, Oregon. So if you tune in there, streaming on USA Track and Field TV, there's some good Wisconsin people in there you're going to want to go see. Zach Zymek, I just talked to him. He's healthy. He's going to get ready, make the World Championship team in the decathlon. We've got our guy, Kenny Bednarik, Kung Fu Kenny, who's run great. I don't know if he's on your show. Sometime you'd love him. Fantastic. There's a gal that could surprise in the 800. Her name is Roisin Willis, who went to Stevens Point area senior high, which is great because then I get to go on national TV and talk about Spash. By the way, Nicole Briscoe, one of my partners on Sports, her dad went to Spash. Her dad's a Spash guy. She was born, I want to say, in Wausau. She's got a lot of Wisconsin in her. So I'm bouncing around there a bit, and then, by the way, in the next week, if you happen to be on a boat in Alaska, I could be on that with you too. That's a whole different story.
Stop by and say hi to John on the boat in Alaska.
And then I hope with this time that I might actually find myself at 1265 and see a game. Because the last few years I have not. I went and I saw the game in London, but the last few times, like, my wife is like, I know you got to work this weekend. Do you care if my sister and I go to the Cowboy games? So they're back. And so she's like, listen, we got the tickets. I'm not, okay. So she goes home. She goes back and sees more games than I have recently. So,
well, I'll tell you what, John, if you make your way back to Green Bay this fall, we've got a ticket for the tailgate for you. You can stop by the Tundra Trio right next to Lambeau Field, and we'd love to have you.
And if nothing else, pencil me in for the draft in 2025.
Okay.
So I don't know how far your day calendar goes, day planner, but I'm going to be there for that. Sure, come hell or high water, I'll be there. I'll be there for that.
Yeah, that'll be fantastic. Certainly looking forward to that. John, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it. Know you're a busy guy. Thanks for jumping on Packed Lunch today and helping break down what's been an interesting Packers offseason.
Always my pleasure. And next time I'll find a green and gold shirt.
Nah, you're fine. Everybody still knows. Everybody still loves that shirt. It's a great golf shirt. I've got one myself. He's John Anderson of ESPN. Thank you so much to him. We'll be back again tomorrow at noon with another edition of Packed Lunch right here on ESPN Wisconsin.